All right, hi everybody, and welcome to the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. I am your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, the Juice, Dave Sadler. This week's show a little different. We're not really going to have rounds and do our normal setup because, believe it or not, there was no fight last week, and there's no fight this week. So,
What?
yeah, a little crazy on the whole MMA schedule. The UFC has been running sometimes 2 events a day, and we haven't been able to talk about UFC fights because there hasn't been any because that fight was canceled and whatnot. So there's not, believe it or not, another UFC fight to the August 16th, which is ridiculous. So so we're gonna have some fun here today as AJ Hiller from MMASignaturesUSA.com joins us on the broadcast. He'll be talking with us today about his website, of course, and other things MMA. And we'll also be answering your fan questions. So send us your questions, Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast, or to either of us on Twitter at Jim Graham, and Dave is at Vigilante Juice. But let's welcome in AJ Hiller here. And how's it going, AJ?
Going great. Thanks a lot for having me.
No problem. Thanks for joining us here live on Beyond the Cage on Wednesday afternoon. And let's start first here. Dave, we'll ask AJ a couple questions first before we get into any other fan questions and whatnot. Now, as fans of the show know, you've sponsored the show. We play your ads. We talk about all the great gear you can get coming in. And I just saw this on one of the things on Facebook, and we were talking before the show preparing. You actually sold these items, but this is just the stuff that AJ gets. All right, this is the type of stuff you can get from him. Stuff you wouldn't even think. Not just gloves and photos and shorts, but you actually got a very unique item, two actually, from Joe Riggs. And I was wondering if you could tell the listeners out there what you got from Joe, and kind of maybe a little bit the story about it if they haven't heard it already.
Yeah, sure. I do a lot with Joe. I'm one of his major sponsors. Ever since his Bellator days and even before that. And he had contacted me right after his mishap last week, and he said, "Hey, I have some unique items if you know anybody who's interested." And he actually started sending me some pictures. He sent me pictures of his UFC contract, which he had spread out in front of him prior to cleaning his gun. So he had them actually in like a horseshoe on the table in front of him. Decides he's going to shoot. Decides he's going to clean his gun, and ends up shooting himself in the hand and also through his leg. And with that, all the blood splattered all over these contracts. And it's about a 14 or 17 page contract. So he said, you sell a lot of fight-worn memorabilia, and I've sold tons of Joe's fight-worn memorabilia and championship belts, so on and so forth. He said, "Is there anybody who'd be interested in this?" And I said, people aren't interested in anything. So put it on, and if you've been in the group, there's like 108 or 110 comments. The funny thing is I let it go. I mean, this contract sold earlier in that day, and I just wanted to see more of the comments that came in, and it definitely went to a good place. They got a great deal on it. And it just goes to show that people will collect anything. And then also, at the same time, it shows people's ignorance with their knowledge, I guess, of fight-worn and memorabilia that may have some biohazards on it. That I think, to the right collector, that makes it even more valuable. Then he sends me a picture of the bullet shards that were pulled out of his leg yesterday. So that was even cooler, and they didn't last as long. They actually sold in about 10 minutes.
I was reading the comments on there, AJ, and you said there was like 110, 120, whatever it was, and it was like, people will say, "Hey, like I want to get those shorts from Shogun when he fought Henderson," and they're not even white, like they're completely red. And
Right.
people will say, "Oh, I'll pay thousands and thousands of dollars of that." Covered in blood, sweat, other people's blood and sweat. But then these guys are going on your Facebook page and they're saying, "Oh, that's a biohazard because there's a puddle of blood." Same guy just paid $1,000 for Shogun shorts. But it was entertaining, and of course they're like, it's actually entertaining because people are on there and they're saying, "Oh, you shouldn't sell that stuff," like, how do we know that's real? How do we know you didn't print that contract up? Like, would you really go through that much You know, it's quite entertaining.
Oh, it is. There are a million things that you could come up with. You know, the
Yeah.
last thing on my mind I'm going to make up is a UFC contract with blood on it from Joe Riggs. You know what I mean? It was comical. Some of those comments were absolutely comical.
Yep, it's comical all the way to the bank, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So it worked out good because you know, Joe's going to miss his fight next month, so that means he's not going to get paid. So actually, things like this are going to go towards his medical bills.
Nice, nice.
Now, is that the most unique item that has come across, I guess, your table or however you want to say it to sell, or have you sold anything even crazier than a bloody contract before?
I have something that's even crazier than this, and it's actually I got it off of a collector, and it's actually. Do you remember the last Pride event when I think it was the last Pride event, one of the last Pride events when Jeff Munson fought Fedor, and Fedor actually broke Jeff Munson's leg. Okay, I have Jeff Munson's cast from that fight, and also the X-rays from the fight, you know, from the broken bone.
I'm trying to be a one-upper, and yeah, I don't have anything, so congratulations.
But I do. I have a lot of fight worn. One of the things when we sponsor someone, you know, in the contract we'll put, you know, we want some fight worn memorabilia and also autographs. We're probably one of the only sponsors, if not the only sponsor, that actually benefits from sponsoring. You know, somebody's not going to watch the fight and see a logo and say, oh, you know, that's Joe's, you know, service station. I'm going to call them and get my car fixed. You know, so they're watching the fight. They're not watching the logos or anything like that. We do it mainly to help the fighters out during training camp. You know, pay for some of their you know, expenses, so on and so forth. But in return, we automatically have a return on investment because we're getting the autographed memorabilia, we're getting the fight worn memorabilia. So that's why I say we're probably one of the only sponsors in mixed martial arts that benefit from it.
You know, AJ, I got a question for you. You know, your logo is usually on the backside, or you know, like on the legs of the shorts. And for a business like you, you said you get a return on an investment, which is clearly that's taking place. But for you, are you hoping that a lot of people will realize that the MMA signature logo, what it stands for, that you guys have all of the game or the fight worn stuff? Because, like you said, Joe's service station is probably not going to get a return on their investment. But you might not get 1,000 people come to your website to visit, but if they keep seeing your logo, it may pique an interest to visit your site.
Yep, and that's what it comes down to, the branding. You know, so when somebody automatically sees the logo, they know exactly what it is. Like if a fighter is fighting and you see the MP, you know, you automatically know that that's Muscle Farm. And we're just trying to brand our logo to that point of, you know, you see the logo, you automatically know what it is. And depending on the fighter, you know, we strategically, you know, we'll negotiate where the logo is going to go. If it's a ground fighter, you know, we want it on the back side because chances are they're going to be on top of the person, and our logo is going to get more TV time, you know.
Now, we had a discussion, Dave and I forget if we had guests on, but we were talking about like the exorbitant like sponsor fee. Now, you don't have to talk, you know, dollars and cents what you pay or anything, but we heard there's like an exorbitant fee that you have to pay to the UFC. And I guess what we were wondering, because what we saw, it didn't say whether this was a one-time thing or it was per fight or per fighter, but is there like a huge fee up front when you're sponsoring a fighter that's in the UFC, and is that like a one-time cost, or do you got to do that like every time you sponsor one of these guys?
Actually, we deal directly with the management companies with the fighter, or sometimes there's a middleman that'll, you know, act as like an agent or you know, a person who goes and gets the sponsorships. We're lucky because we were actually grandfathered in where we were sponsoring prior to this new thing that the UFC has, that it costs $50,000 to sponsor.
Wow.
And you know, if thank God we're grandfathered in, because you know, that's something that at this point, we probably would make the decision not to. However, the politics, I think, come in a lot because I'll take Clinch Gear, for example. Clinch Gear, Dan Henderson's company, nobody could wear Clinch Gear attire in the UFC without it being covered up because Clinch Gear is not an authorized sponsor for the UFC. And Clinch Gear won't pay the $50,000. Smart because $50,000. If you think about it, you got to sell a lot of stuff, just to come up with that kind of money. So now with the new uniforms that the UFC are going to put on, who knows what's going to happen? The sponsorships are going to be more limited, and they may change a few things that who knows in the future we may have to opt out of sponsorships as far as being on the shorts. But I'm sure the banner or something else will be an option.
Just as a personal, not even a business thing, how cool is it to watch these fights on TV and you're like, that's my company's logo on the banner? How cool is that?
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty dynamic. One of the things I remember, it's almost like you've achieved something. And what you've achieved is you paid a lot of money to have your logo on. But it was pretty neat. Like the first time that we sponsored somebody, and it's on pay-per-view or it's on Fox, or and this person, whoever it was, whoever it is, Hector Lombard or Sarah Kaufman or Lauren Murphy, Mike Reel, all these people tweeting about your company. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's the big leagues, I guess, at that point.
Now, AJ, do you notice whether it's a fighter you were sponsored or just any UFC or Bellator fighter? Do you notice, like, I know you've done some stuff with Dennis Bermudez, and he recently had a big win over Clay Guida. Do you notice, like, when guys like that have like a big win or have a sweet knockout or something like that? Do you notice like an increase in traffic or people asking you if you got this fighter or certain stuff's bought because all of a sudden that fighter won and now all of a sudden they're hot and you've had that stuff sitting around for a couple months? Do you notice like a increase there in traffic?
It's great, and knock on wood. I knock on wood, my dogs go crazy. I think so. No. We've had a string of good luck, and I don't want to jinx that at all. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got three dogs that think they're pit bulls.
Apparently, AJ let the dogs out.
Yeah. And the biggest one is 9 pounds. So we've lucked out. I mean, I've had Dennis at my house. I've done a lot of different things with Dennis Bermudez, and he signed probably, if I had to guess, 400, 500, 600 things for me. Everything from photos to gloves to fist bumps, and it's almost like same thing with Uriah Hall. After his loss, the tough loss, I had signings set up with him, and I had him sign tons of stuff. And it's almost like the stock market. When somebody's doing great, their stuff is going to sell, and as soon as something bad happens, their stuff is sitting there on a shelf. But those two in particular, Dennis and Uriah, they've really helped our company out, and also it worked in our advantage because we had all this stuff that was signed. When we go to events, and I'll send what I call runners to like a hotel or something like that, trying to set up private signings or even getting autographs at the event, I get everybody, and I'll get 20, 30, 40 of everybody on the card. Guys that you never even heard of, guys that I can't even find images of. I mean, that's I got their like high school wrestling picture or high school prom picture, just because you never know what's going to happen. Some of them may be worth $1. Some of them may turn out to be Chris Weidman and champion.
Now, is there any items? How do I want to phrase this? Is there any items, I guess, that sell better than others, regardless of the price? Like, do gloves seem to sell really well as opposed to photos, or do shorts sell better than T-shirts? Is there one thing that it seems like, man, we seem to sell a lot of this, and that's what you try to get, maybe more so than other items?
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to preference. We currently have maybe 750 signed gloves in stock. Pitchers, 8x10s, at least 20,000 signed photos in stock. I would say I ship more photos than anything because the price point is smaller. But you get a lot of particular customers who want to. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're good.
Who want to get the gloves, the actual official gloves. Myself, I'm going to be the first to tell you, I'm not even a real collector. I have all these autographs, and I don't have anything even hanging up. Look behind me. This, my degrees, my wife's degrees, and an MMA signature thing.
Sarah McMahon's back there.
Yeah, I have to get that done. That was one that she sent me after we, Sarah Kaufman.
Sarah Kaufman, I'm sorry.
After we sponsored her. But everything sells. It all comes down, and if you look at some of my auctions that I do, I start them off low. I'm not going to sit there and sit on, you see like gloves for sale for $150. That's Joe Riggs calling me now.
Oh, nice. You can take that.
Yeah, take it.
Hey, bud, I'm on a podcast right now. I have you on speakerphone. You want to say hi to the guys?
Who are you talking to?
What's the name of the podcast?
Beyond the Cage.
Oh yeah, it's Beyond the Cage podcast.
What's going on, man?
Well, I just somebody to talk to my friend and interrupt. You guys interrupt me at the talking time, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, this is Jim and Dave.
Well, what's up, how you doing?
We're doing good, Joe.
Call back when you get set. Good luck.
All right, bud. I'll call you back. Bye.
Oh,
So
now I'm
great.
Yeah.
now I'm gonna text Steve and have him call me so that we can be just on, just as great.
Yeah. So, like today, for example, I took a few days. We went away. The family, my kids compete in Naga, and I'll just plug them real quick. They both competed in gi and no gi, and won the championships for both gi and no gi. So we were pretty proud. But I took 4 days off, and when I come back, I had over 100 things I had to ship out today.
Nice.
So it gets pretty crazy. We're going to be looking in the near future to start getting employees with our company.
Well, let Dave and I know. We can help you out, especially me, because Dave makes a lot of money already. So especially me, because I'm broke. So I definitely can maybe help you out on that front. And that's for real. That's just me just saying that as a podcast host. That's for real. I don't have it in the background. I just have my cool Punisher photo there, but I do have a degree, so it's somewhere in the back. I paid a lot of money for it. I'm like, it'll go over there. It doesn't look as good as my signed stuff I got from you, so I got that in the back somewhere. So, but yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up, because Dave and I, we like the round 5 figures, the little collectibles that if people don't know what I'm talking, they should, but if they don't, they look like this. There's my Chuck there with his belt. Recently, they, I believe, went out of business, and they're not going to be making those figures anymore. And I didn't know if, I'm not sure if I don't think it's on the website, but have you gotten any requests to like carry or sell any of those figures, whether it be signed or otherwise, and kind of just your thoughts is kind of just from the business side, are these figures still doing well? Do you think that another company should pick them up? Kind of what's your thoughts there on kind of like the action figure side of it, because currently nobody's making them anymore.
I'm sure somebody's going to pick it up. I mean, the market is huge for these action figures. Always has been. Whether it was Star Wars, G.I. Joe, so on and so forth. Somebody will pick it up. Similar to how Jax had it, and even back in the day, baseball. There was the starting lineup, and then it went to the McFarlane. Somebody's going to pick it up just because the market is huge. It's like the Twinkie. They went out of business, and boom, somebody bought it up, and the Twinkies are for sale again. But me personally, I hate these round 5 figures. They take up too much room. I have 4 boxes waiting for Dave to take off my hands.
Okay, stop. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. Now it's gonna get serious.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Hold
This
on.
is-
You're lucky. You're lucky because my wife's sitting right here. Where were all those cards that were sitting right there? Can you bring those to me?
This is what we get on a live show, AJ. We get all this
No.
unpredictability. That's why we like doing it live for the people. It's a nice change of pace here. All right, hang on. Let's see what
AJ says, oh, I've got like 4 boxes. It's going to cost like $8 million to mail it to Illinois, right? See this box? It doesn't even fit in the screen. Look at this. AJ's like, send me a picture of some of your best cards. This is what we've come up with. Look at this.
Oh,
There's like 8 million cards in here. Look at it. Hector Lombard, Forrest Griffin, Johnny. Like, there's literally like 8 million cards in here. But I do want your round 5 figures, so.
I've been waiting for the and Jim, like the question you asked, the stock, if it goes up or down. When Dave and I first made the deal to swap cards, there's some guys in that deal who have lost over the past couple months. So the value of those cards are down low. So Dave, we're gonna have to renegotiate our deal.
Oh man. Well. Oh man. Now you got him flustered, AJ.
Yeah, now you got me flustered. Because, and I got to go back. You mentioned something about the Twinkie. Was that some sort of fat joke about me? Because I don't even like Twinkies.
No, but look I'll tell you what. I'm in the worst shape of my life. Thank God this cuts me off right here. I'm walking around at literally about 230 pounds. I was 185 pounds my whole entire life. I thought they were starting to make extra large shirts smaller.
Man, you gotta get into that Naga with your kids there.
What's that?
If you get into the Naga with your kids there, you're burning some calories.
Yeah.
Quick.
You're not kidding.
But maybe they'll put you in an armbar, and you're like, nah, I don't want that embarrassment,
I know.
if they're winning these championships.
Yeah. 401ks.
Right. Yeah.
I worked for Walmart for 15 years. I was a district manager, and I was also a store manager. I ran a $55 million a year Walmart store. I was the general manager, and I had 300 employees. And I recently retired over the past month to focus solely on MMA. And it was crazy because leaving a job that pays $250,000 a year to follow your passion was pretty crazy. But I believe in myself, and if I was a betting man, I'd always bet on myself. My wife thought I was absolutely nuts, but it's only a matter of time that this business gets to where we're gonna be, our goals.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we're glad to have you, not only aboard the podcast today, but, as a partner, throwing out plugs your way and throwing out plugs our way, and it really helps because we like what you do. And when you were mentioning, the comments on the Facebook page about the Joe Riggs thing, I thought the coolest thing was, like you said, you kind of let it go on. People were questioning, whether it was real or, whether you can sell something with blood. But there were several people in the group that were like, if AJ says it's legit, it's legit. And I thought, as a friend of yours, I was like, wow, that has to be like a really high honor that, you don't even have to have an actual certificate saying it's legit. People realize that if it's from you, it's good. You're not going to try to swindle people and sell them fake memorabilia.
Yeah, it's very humbling because back in the day, whenever you're starting off something and people start seeing your name around, there's always critics out there. And I remember, back in 2011, 2010, there was folks that had some reservations. Oh, this is fake, blah 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 blah. Or same thing with the replica gloves. I was selling replica gloves, whether it was UFC or Strikeforce, Pride gloves, and folks had their reservations. So being a businessman, my number one thing is I want to make everybody happy. So since then, I've stopped replicating, gloves. Just because I don't want to have any negativity drawn towards my business. But like you said about some of those comments, I mean, it's refreshing, to be in a group of I would say probably the hardest core collectors in the world.
Yeah.
And to have them on my side, and those who have been very critical towards me in the past, and now are actually defending myself. It's great. It really feels good.
Now, I mentioned the round 5 figures earlier, and you brought up kind of you're trading some with Dave and get some cards. Is the cards an aspect that you've kind of maybe been slowly thinking about maybe adding or getting into? Because it's almost like autograph stuff that you can offer that is 100% certified, and all you got to do is carry it or trade it. Is that something maybe you've been thinking about kind of getting into, or not really?
Well, ever since I was a kid, I love cards. I love opening up boxes of cards and packs, and it's almost like a lottery ticket. Or a Christmas present. You don't know what you're going to get. So I was always a card person, and what I started to do with a lot of the cards was I have a great framer. He's got this machine that cuts mats out, and what I've been doing is an 8x10 photo in a mat with the card, whether it was a relic piece or an autograph piece. And I've just been putting those together, just for a piece that somebody could sell. I honestly, I buy everything. I would take anything, because I could sell it. Some things I'll lose money on, but most I'm making money on, or at least breaking even, or I'd be way out of business. But I just love everything except for round 5 figures.
So you just tipped your hand. So now you should send them to me at much cheaper because you don't even like them.
I'm gonna start opening them up.
No, don't do that.
All right.
Hey Jim, let's try to get into some of the stories, and let's pick AJ's brain as a fight fan.
All right, well, let's bring this up because we got a fan question, and we can get his thoughts on it too. This is from our friend Chuck Grace at MMA Insider, and this is, of course, about the recent events that happened with the Jones-Cormier press conference for UFC 178, which was in Los Angeles, and this is what he asked us, Dave. He said, what are your guys' thoughts on the incident from yesterday's stare-down? And then he kind of gave a little bit of a comment. He said, obviously it helps build hype for the fight, but is that the sort of thing that could sour potential fans on this sport? Now, stuff like this has happened to some extent, maybe not sets falling down and whatnot, somewhat fist-blowing, that much within UFC. We've seen people get pushed and some, people rushing in some mad stare-downs, but we've seen stuff like this happen in boxing. So this is not something that's never happened before at a press conference, and it probably won't be the last time something like this happens at a press conference. When you have two dudes who are, highly tuned athletic machines, and there's a little bit of an edge to both these guys, angers flare up, and you get a little close. People don't like invading personal space. Stuff like this is going to happen and probably will continue to happen. So I don't think it's a huge mark for the sport because it's been done before, and I think it does help to sell the fight a little bit, and maybe it kind of helps because a lot of people were down on John Jones because they were calling him soft, maybe not. He hadn't finished these last couple of guys. A lot of people were riding him despite him winning and racking up all these fights. So maybe there's a little bit of an edge to John Jones now. And now people go, all right, he didn't back down from DC there. Maybe now there's a little bit of an edge. It creates a little bit of different angle. And, I didn't have too much of a problem with it because I've seen it before, and, we're going to see it again.
Yeah, I don't like it because it coincides with, that was Monday, if I'm not mistaken, and the first pre-sale starts in 32 minutes from right now. And if this was Tuesday or Wednesday of fight week, I completely understand. But these guys are already going to quote-unquote blows 45 days before the fight. You know what this has got the makings of? We're going to get a UFC 114 main event with Rashad and Rampage where they go like this for a half hour, where they just paw at each other because they're going to be so fired up when they get in there. I hope it's better than that, but there's a lot of signs to me that look like it was kind of I really don't want to say premeditated, but John Jones, can we agree, is one of the fiercest strikers in the UFC? That's fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Cormier, he puts his face on Cormier. Cormier pushes him, and when they're that close to each other, his only option for a punch is a huge flailing, like, overhand left. He's one of the most dominant strikers in the world. Why wouldn't you just shoot a jab across and knock him out? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not big on conspiracy theories, but it looked a little ridiculous. And then not more than 5 minutes after the fact, they were back on Twitter yelling at each other. 2 hours later, they were the front story on SportsCenter. Then they were on Fox Sports Live. That's a big coincidence. That I know that stuff was probably scheduled, but you just happened to have a big fight, and then all of that stuff rolled out. The fight should sell itself. They don't need that.
Do you have any thoughts on it, AJ?
I'm just thinking, two competitors at that level shouldn't be acting like that. I understand, there's a lot of hype with this fight. And, of course, you're going to get into each other's faces and, anything to sell the fight. But I just think it was juvenile for some of the actions that happened. I mean, I wasn't there, of course, but I saw the videos, and, these guys had the potential of making hundreds of thousands of dollars and possibly millions of dollars off of this fight. And to risk, getting injured. I mean, they fell off the stage. I mean, that could have, turned out that this fight could have been canceled because one of them could have gotten hurt. I think when you're at that level, you have to act a totally different way. I mean, Chael Sonnen, him and Anderson Silva had the best, probably the best ever. What do you want to call it? Head-to-head, stare down, so on and so forth. But smart enough not to act in that kind of manner. And I think, because John Jones has a lot of haters out there. And I guess when you're a champion, you're going to have haters. But a lot of the haters that John Jones does have is because John Jones created those haters. Daniel Cormier, could come out of this or go into this as a superhero. He just has to act in a certain way. By pushing Jones's face, that alone could have made him a hero. To some people. But I think that went too far. And to Dave's point, it could be a conspiracy, to boost sales. But I don't think they need to boost the sales. I think people pay to see for the chance of John Jones to lose. Does that make sense? I think more pay-per-views are sold because people want to see John Jones lose.
More people wanted to see Anderson Silva lose, and like there was always that. Is Anderson going to lose? Is this going to be the day that Anderson loses? And that's what people want to see.
Right.
Yeah, and another thing about that, if you notice, it was not Dana White initiating that little media scrum there. It was Dave Scholler, who's like the head of their PR and media relations and whatnot. So I wonder if Dana was there and he was the one saying, all right, move and do a stare down, if that same thing would have happened in front of the boss instead of, one of the, lower guys on the totem pole. Again, I'm not like conspiracy theories a day, but I gotta believe if Dana's there, it doesn't happen.
Hey, and
if the boss is watching, that doesn't happen.
And just for clarification, in case Dave Scholler's watching, Jim was the one who said you were low on the totem pole. So if you want to give me media credentials, like that's Dave Sadler. Sadler. So if you
I meant lower than Dana White because he's the guy running the show. Dave, no, it was no disrespect to Mr. Scholler because that was pretty cool that he was there. I mean, he got to run it all. But I'm just saying, if it was not, if it wasn't Dave Scholler, if it heck, even if it was one of the Fertittas or somebody like, somebody high, really high up there, the one signing the check, so to speak, I don't think that happens.
I agree.
So while we're on fan questions here, we got another question. This one is actually from our Facebook page, and I will pull it up here. I believe it is from our Facebook friend Raul, as he wrote in, and I think, didn't he win one of our contests, Dave?
I believe he won a contest, and every time we ask for questions, he sends us questions.
Oh, cool.
I believe so. So yeah, so thanks Raul Carranza for writing in, and this is your question here. Do you guys believe that Tyron Woodley is worthy of a fight, considering, I think he meant title fight, considering he lost to Rory McDonald when supposedly the winner of Woodley McDonald was supposed to get the winner of Hector Lombard and Dong Yag Kim, with that winner getting a title shot. So kind of a couple different scenarios, though. But he put, if so, is Rory McDonald backtracking with his current fight? And I'll go first here. I don't think Rory's backtracking because, yeah, he beat Tyron Woodley, but when we were talking about that fight, Dave, we thought that that fight was more Woodley underperforming more so than McDonald going out there and just, wowing everybody. And I think that's why he didn't get a title shot, and that's why he has to take one more fight. You add in the fact that Robbie Lawler has already beat him and has looked incredible in his 2 fights since losing to Hendricks. That's, once again why, he's not getting the shot. He has to take another fight. And realistically, Robbie Lawler has beaten more guys in the top 10 than Roy McDonald. Roy McDonald's beaten Tyron Woodley, bad performance by Woodley. He had a baffling win over Ellenberger, and Damian Maia had that good first round, and then crap. So he's had guys not, fight up to their best of their abilities, and that's not to say Rory's not good, but if you look at the top 10 wins Robbie has, and he's finished some of these guys, like he went in there, he finished Jake Ellenberger. There's a big difference, and he's had a lot more explosive nature, and that's why he's getting the title shot next, and Rory has to take another fight, in my opinion.
I'll give you the floor, AJ. You can go next.
I'll tell you what, I think, Joe Silva, Dana White, the Fertitta brothers are probably the smartest in the business, any business, whether it's retail, fighting, anything. Rory McDonald's not going to sell a title fight. He's not going to sell. Robbie Lawler, Hendricks 2, that's going to sell just as many pay-per-views as probably a Jones-Cormier fight. So at the end of the day, I think it comes down to where you're going to make the money. Where you're going to make the money.
Yeah. To answer his question, do I think that Woodley can be in a title fight? I think absolutely he has the ability to be in a title fight. Like you said, in some of his previous performances, he against Rory, he just didn't show up. There was a lot on the line. Maybe pressure got to him. But how many times have we heard a loss is the best thing that happens to some of these guys? Look at Robbie Lawler, for crying out loud. Where was he 3 years ago, and where is he right now? I mean, what if Tyron Woodley goes on a run like that? We could be seeing Tyron Woodley fight for the belt and be the favorite coming into it. You just don't know. And I'm always very amped to see a guy come off a loss and see how well he performs, because if you're Tyron Woodley, another loss doesn't kill your title hopes, but you have a long road back to title contention, because that division is stacked from 1 to 15.
Yeah.
While we got a quick second here, I want to bring up, of course, our presenting sponsor is Fight Chicks, and I wanted to mention, of course, they're going to be all over the Invicta event, the first ever Invicta event on UFC Fight Pass, and that will be Invicta 8, I believe, right?
9, I believe.
Or is it 9?
No, it's 8.
It's Invicta 8, September 6th, again, exclusively on the UFC Fight Pass to watch, or you can go down to Kansas City to watch it in person. And they're going to be sponsoring Jody Is Quibel, and they're also going to get her a shirt. She'll be there. And then Peggy Morgan, who was recently on Tough Rousey and Tate, she will be fighting there. They're going to be dropping out a walkout tee for Peggy Morgan. And I believe there's also going to be an event called the Outdoor War around your neck of the woods there in Chicago, Dave?
Yeah, the XFO, that's the one that Curran, I believe, is a part of, and Dan Lardy is the promoter. It's a huge show. It's if I'm not mistaken, Jim, it's a pro-am, and what they do is the fight start at about 2 p.m. like the title suggests, it's outdoors, and they have amateurs from about 2 to 6. Then there's a little intermission, and then Ray Flores will call everybody back to the octagon, and then they'll have a pro card from 7 until whenever. So they'll be out there slinging T-shirts and hopefully dropping a few Beyond the Cage business cards, and maybe we'll hit 1,000 likes on our Facebook page.
That would be nice. So again, that's Fight Chicks. That's what they got coming up. Of course, you can follow them on Twitter at Fight Chicks. It's just pretty easy like that.
Hey.
So, yes, Dave.
Sorry, I know this isn't going toward off the script, but AJ's here, and I wanted to get his opinion. So, give me your opinion on this whole Ronda Rousey wants to fight Gina Carano, or people are saying that maybe Holly Holm or Cyborg or whatever. And just to lay a little groundwork, clearly I'm a huge Kat Zingano fan, and I know she has to fight Amanda Nunes in September on the Jones card. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the whole little scenario, knowing Carano's coming off a 5-year layoff and all the stuff that goes with it. So what do you think about that whole little situation?
I'm going to be honest with you. There's so many new fight fans out there. There's probably more new fight fans than there are old fight fans. So I would probably say about 70%, maybe 75% of the fighters don't even know who Gina Carano is, because they're so new to MMA. I don't think that fight would sell as much as the Rousey Cyborg fight. Now, the Rousey Cyborg fight, I think, would be probably the most anticipated fight, possibly in UFC history. A couple different reasons why. It'll be a title fight. Undefeated Ronda versus a beast. I mean, what else? Cyborg.
That's a good adjective.
And I think that would be the fight that I'd want to see. I don't think I'd want to even see the Gina Carano fight versus Rousey, and the reason is I love Gina Carano. I think she's absolutely amazing. I think she's a great fighter. I think she should stick with the movies. There's no reason to get that pretty face bashed up or one of those arms broken. And I honestly think that Ronda only has 2-3 fights left in her. I think she's gonna take the route of the big screen, which would be smart, And the smartest thing for Ronda is to play it safe for her next couple fights. She doesn't want to fight Cyborg. She doesn't want to fight even Holly Holm. I mean that's a tough fight for her. That's a tough fight for her. Kat Zingano. I mean, look what Kat Zingano did to Miesha Tate. She overcame adversity. She's undefeated. So who knows what's going to happen? But Ronda, she looked amazing against McMahon. She looked amazing in her last fight. Who knows what she has? But I think she's sort of like Tyson, where they have the fight won before they even step foot in that cage or the ring, just because of all the hype behind them and the stigmatism that comes.
Now, Dave, did you get any other questions via text or tweets yet? Have you checked our tweeters?
I'll throw a couple quick ones out. Maybe we'll just kind of run through them.
All right.
This is from my friend Aaron, AJ. Hey, we'll throw this one to AJ. How about that?
All right.
He says Paul Heyman, who in WWE is Brock Lesnar's manager, and I'm not even sure if he is his manager currently, but says that Lesnar is cleared to fight, and at this point he's 100% medically cleared. I guess a two-part question. Do you think the UFC welcomes him back with open arms if he wants? And if he wants, can he only come back and take a huge fight, or can he work his way back through the rankings?
He would have to take a huge fight. I mean, I'm not a huge wrestling fan. Like, I'll watch it because it's like almost like a man's soap opera, I think once you're in that heavyweight division, I mean, I can't honestly think of any heavyweight that I wouldn't want to see fight another heavyweight. I mean, because you just never know what's going to happen. You know, I would love to see Brock Lesnar fight, Alistair Overeem again. You know, but I think the pay-per-views for Brock Lesnar, because he has following him the WWE fans, and I think the WWE fans are so loyal to their folks that no matter what, it's going to be a big buy pay-per-view. But I would love to see Overeem fight him again. I'd love to see Brock Lesnar versus Travis Browne. You know, I think that would be a great fight. But Brock Lesnar needs to go in and get a major fight if he's going to come back into the UFC. One, because he's a former champion, and two, of who he is.
I think that if this is true, if they got papers or X-rays or scans or whatever they had to do to clear him, they can present that to the UFC. I don't see any reason why the UFC wouldn't re-sign him. I honestly don't. Bring him back, like you said. You're going to make money whether he's the main event, co-main event. I think ratings would go to the roof if you put him on Fox. Maybe you don't want to put him on Fox. He sometimes does some questionable things after the fight, but you know what I mean. He's a charismatic guy. He's entertaining, and he gives 110% when he gets in the cage. He's never had a bad. His performance hasn't been based on effort or anything like that. It's just more been medical. That's why he didn't have such a good fight, maybe against Overeem, like you mentioned. But one fight I would love to see, and I think it'd be a great fight for him to come back. We never got to see Mir Lesnar 3. We were supposed to. Injuries happened. We didn't get to see that. Mir's kind of skidded a little bit, and he's not as a viable commodity. But you put him up against Brock Lesnar, third fight, the rubber match. That's a really nice fight to kind of ease him in there a little bit. And then you got, like you said, you got maybe a rematch with Overeem on the table. You got a rematch with Velasquez. Remember, he never fought Junior Dos Santos when the two coached against each other in Ultimate Fighter. You still got that fight out there. So there's what, 4 fights right there. And then, like you said, EJ, you even throw in, like one of the young guys in the division, like a Travis Browne or a Stipe Miocic, or maybe you do some, crazy epic fight with Mark Hunt or something. You know what I mean? There's so many, or Bigfoot Silva, just because those two guys are ridiculously huge, and I think the cage might collapse if Lesnar and Bigfoot Silva are in the cage at the same time. So, I mean, there's a lot of, I think, good time fights for him out there if he can come back and if he's good to go, because that's the only reason why he left, is because he wasn't medically cleared. So if he's medically cleared, why not?
Yep. Another one. Rhonda says she wants to be the highest paid actor in Hollywood. Jim, your thoughts?
Well, she may want to be the highest paid actor in Hollywood, but she's not going to get there. I mean, I'm not sure who the highest paid. I would imagine like Will Smith, Tom Cruise, Adam Sandler, maybe Denzel Washington. I think those guys are getting what, like $20 million, $30 million a picture. Those guys like that. You mean like actual actors? Yeah, actual actors. Heck, the whole cast of The Big Bang Theory right now, I think it's like 7 of them, they're getting paid $1 million per episode. And there's 22 episodes in the season. So they're going to make $22 million off of their episodes or something like that. So do I think she's going to get to something like that? No. Can she make a nice living and probably make more than MMA? Probably. I think so. But I don't know if she's going to all of a sudden go from doing something, all this combat sports and judo all her life to then become the highest paid actor. I don't see it. She may want to, but I don't think that's going to happen. But she can still have a nice career and not be the highest paid actor.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let's say you're only getting $5 million per picture. That's still a lot of money.
AJ, I got one for you here. Should John Jones and Daniel Cormier get fined by the UFC? Dana White loved it, but the Athletic Commission says there should be a fine. Your thoughts?
I'm gonna honestly say, if they want to set a standard and say, we're not going to tolerate this, absolutely fine them. Of course, Dana White doesn't want to fine them, and he's smart because that's hyping this fight. That's going to make more money. Me personally, I would say absolutely. I mean, there's got to be some kind of punishment for it. If that were to happen in the cage, I mean, they kicked out Paul Daly, for punching Koscheck after a fight, which was totally uncalled for. would you put this on the same exact plate as that? It's cheap shots were taken. Two grown men in front of a large crowd. I mean, that could have been a lot worse than what happened. I mean, if you watch the video, I watched it like 5 times because I was trying to see, maybe even more than 5. I wanted to see exactly what happened. And God bless you.
That was my adorable daughter that's trying to make her appearance. Trying to make her inaugural appearance. She keeps sneaking in.
That's a good way to come in. But I really think that something needs to happen because you don't wait till a tragedy happens to come up with policies or rules. You want to be proactive and make sure you have these things in place to prevent those from happening. And I'll tell you what, there could have been fans seriously injured because of that. Imagine somebody who's not used to getting punched. John throws one of those, long limbs, and he hits just a bystander, and knocks them out, cuts them up. They end up in the hospital, So literally, there could have been a lot worse circumstances that happen with that. So me personally, I think they need to be fined.
Now, the fight itself is going to be in Las Vegas, right? That's where the actual fight's taking place. But
Yes.
this press conference was in California.
Not correct.
No?
The fight.
Wrong on that?
They're on a press tour like they did last fall, and they were in MGM. They started in MGM.
Okay.
Then they went to LA. Then I think.
Okay, so they hadn't gone to LA yet. All right. Well, in this instance, then yes, the Nevada State Athletic Commission could do something because it happened to be in Nevada. I thought for some reason it wasn't. They already did the Los Angeles part of the tour, and that's where this happened. Which in that case, Nevada would have no say in what happened there. It would be simply either the California Commission,
Right.
I think, or the UFC itself. I mean, regardless of the state, the UFC can always find their fighters. But I think, like you said, AJ, Dana White's not Roger Goodell like the NFL. I don't think he obsesses over finding these guys over every little thing, and it's come to a ridiculous point in the NFL where these guys are fined for reasons they probably shouldn't be. But I could definitely see hitting them for a couple grand or taking something away from the fight purse or something because like you said, in that instance where there was a lot of fans there. Now if this happened at maybe like a weigh-in or something else where fans are not right up close, they're not all holding their cell phones and their cameras and whatnot, maybe a fine doesn't happen at least from the UFC. But I think in this instance, I think you might be correct and at least teach a little lesson, just a little bit,
Yeah, I definitely think something needs to happen. If not, this is going to happen again and again and again. And believe me, I love seeing it. Most of us love seeing it. But if it was one of us who got hurt, or one of our kids that got hurt, it would be a different story. Absolutely. Hey, I'm gonna real quick put my son on here. He wants to say hi to you guys.
That's cool.
All right. This is AJ.
What's up, man?
Hi.
Did you just competed at Naga?
Stand up. Can't see, this is you right there.
Okay.
All right.
Did you win?
Yeah, I came in first twice.
Nice. Did you what your dad said? What you were in gi and no gi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get a sword or a belt?
Yeah.
Where's
Yeah.
that?
It's pretty big.
Nice. Yeah. I can't compete at Naga because I can't win swords like that. Be dangerous around my house.
Yeah, that's why you can't compete at Naga.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
I would win. Don't worry, I would win.
Oh man.
Hey,
man.
Little AJ, do you have a favorite UFC fighter?
I like them all, but I like Chris Weidman.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I like that one. You have any questions for him, Jim?
Let's see. So when you won, did they just give you your black belt right there? They just go, that's pretty good, and they just give it to you, or do you still gotta work? Do you still got a couple more levels to go there?
Well, like there's different degrees, like different black belt degrees, like first degree, second degree, all different degrees. Yeah.
So basically, the competition that he was in, it was only AJ's only a yellow belt. So he was facing in jiu-jitsu. So he was actually going up against other yellow belts and up to green belts. But it comes down to ages, weights and stuff like that. My kids have only been competing jiu-jitsu for less than a year, and they've already won world champions, battle at the beach, and Naga's pretty cool because they give the swords. So that's real good, having an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old walking around with these big swords, but it's pretty cool. But then they also get the gold medals and everything like that. So they compete with folks in their same level. But they could have been training a lot longer than my kids have. However, my kids have also trained Isshin-Ryu. My son's an adult black belt in Isshin-Ryu karate. My daughter, she's a brown belt in Isshin-Ryu karate, and my wife is a black belt in Isshin-Ryu. But for the record, I could kick all their asses at the same time. Okay.
Right. And you are what? And what belt are you in anything?
I'm a black belt in
Life.
My own. No, I boxed when I was younger. I was in Tang Soo Do karate when I was younger, but train. I haven't trained any kind of jiu-jitsu. Did wrestle for a while, but I'm just an avid fan.
So I was gonna say, so AJ, I think you're going for the first brother-sister combination to fight in the UFC, because we've had brothers, we've had father and son, but we have not had a brother and a sister yet, and maybe you got the first pair there.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Like I said, they're my 401ks.
I'm gonna buy I have 6-year-old twins. I'm gonna buy them T-shirts that say 401ks. That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Man, they're making me feel ashamed to say that I have a yellow belt in Muay Thai. I was gonna not say that. I was like, no, boy, they're already outclassing me here. I'm turning 25 tomorrow. I only got that to show for it. Like, I got that in the Chuck Liddell round 5 I showed you earlier. Like, that's it.
That's good. That's good. But we started them off young. I think they started off Isshin-Ryu when they were at 4 years old, and yeah. And
I was
4 and 5.
Okay, yeah. So 4 and 5. So what happened was, they were training three times a week, and so it was good classes that they were getting. However, for a parent, it's the best thing because, you could smack your kid around, and if they get hurt, you just say we're training. We're training. Right? Yeah, clean up your mess. No, I'm not going to clean it up. All right. No, we're training.
You should have blocked that. That was your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man.
This is why we do live shows.
That is right. So both those questions were from Aaron, going back to the fan questions, Dave?
Yeah, all those ones that I read to you guys, those were from Aaron.
Okay. Do we have any more from Aaron or anybody else we got on while we're still going here?
No.
Cleared them out?
Steve Sadler from VigilanteMMA.com and my brother sent in some ridiculous questions that we're not going to answer. So,
well, can you read one of them just to appease his ego
he says,
there?
Yeah. He says, Dave, what are your thoughts on if Diaz were to beat Anderson Silva and then get another title shot? Which won't happen, and that is a terrible question. I can't believe he runs a website if he's going to ask terrible questions like that.
Well,
if he was interviewing somebody, he wouldn't ask a stupid question like that. That's terrible.
Well, let's not put it past him there. Let's no, but if he did beat Anderson Silva, he would get a shot at the title.
That's a travesty.
It would be, but the thing is that he got a shot after losing to Carlos Condit. So if he can get a shot after losing to Carlos Condit, how could he not get a shot after beating Anderson Silva?
Well, maybe they'll just give him the belt.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, they'll just make a belt for him, the Nick Diaz 209 belt, the Stockton belt.
Yeah.
He has an honorary belt there. That's like when do you remember when Charles Sonnen went on Dan Le Batard's show on ESPN and he was holding the belt and Dan's like, "Where'd you get that belt? You haven't won a UFC title." He goes, "What are you talking about? This is my belt." And they're like, "Did you steal that from Anderson Silva?" He goes, "No, I didn't steal this from Anderson Silva." He's like, "I bought this. Like, this is mine." Like, he got offended by them saying, "Yeah, I just went over there and stole Anderson Silva's UFC belt."
Yeah,
So,
I don't know.
but maybe with Nick Diaz, he maybe knows some people that could get him GSP's belt or something. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. He knows some interesting guys over there.
Yeah, I was in Chicago when he had that belt. Remember, I took pictures of it.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if you forgot how important I was.
Oh, that's right. Oh man, how could I forget that?
Man, my Facebook is blowing up on this Round 5 Collectibles website. Apparently, AJ's put nothing on there, so that's good.
I haven't. I've been waiting to buy them. I could have sold these 1,000 times.
All right. Well, let me get my work hat on, and hold on. Where are we at? Yeah, let me get my work hat on. We'll get going.
Nice.
I just got a couple more questions before we end the show for you, AJ. Going back to the website again, MMAsignaturesusa.com, and check out all his stuff there. Has there ever been any items that, whether you buy or get, that come back to you, somehow damaged or not like they're unusable, but maybe there's some creases or some dents or something, and you go, oh man, I just paid and luckily, hopefully, it's not someone that you've already sold it to. But does that stuff happen a lot? And if it does, what kind of things do you do to try to like recoup some of that money?
See, the thing is, a lot of the fighters, I would say 99.9% of the fighters, or anyone who's involved with the actual combat part of it, they're not into the collecting, so they don't understand how like a little crease or a little bend could affect the value of it. So they handle it like if I see them and I'm doing a private signing, and I have say 100 items in front of them, they're not worried about smears, they're not worried about dented corners, they're not worried about creases. What they're doing is they're just handling it just like you'd handle anything else. However, the customers, I'll tell you, there's times that I'll get a call from a customer, an email from a customer that said, their item was dinged or bent, or it was something happened during shipping, or it wasn't exactly what they thought it was. And at the end of the day, customer service is my #1 priority. I'm gonna I'll take care of the customer, whether it's giving them a full refund and keeping the money, or sending them an extra autograph, just to make up for it. At the end of the day, it's all about the customer. If it wasn't for that customer, I wouldn't be in business.
Now, you said sometimes, if you aren't able to go to a show, sometimes you're able to get some runners to get some stuff for you. But has there been, you don't have to name a name if you don't want to, but has there been any fighter that, regardless of where you go, where you send somebody, or whether you're trying to get stuff, buy it from somebody, that it just seems like it's really hard to get for some reason or another, you just can't get X fighter? Have you ever run into that type of scenario?
Of course, there's fighters that are a lot tougher than others. We have a good system put up. Like when I do send the runners, if the fight's on Saturday, the fighters get there on Tuesday. So I have my guys or girls there on Tuesday. And they get everybody's autograph. They're generally the only person at that hotel at that time. So the fighter's not being bombarded. There is certain fighters that I can mention some names. It's really no big deal.
Okay, yeah. I just didn't want you to alienate it. But that's why I said if you can or you want to, because I think people are interested in that.
Yeah. John Jones. We'll use him as an example. I'll tell you, I used to be the biggest John Jones fan in the world. We used to live up in Endwell, New York, which is right next to Endicott, New York. When John was in high school and even when he was in college, and John still lives up that way in Ithaca. So I've dealt with John tons of times. I sat next to him on an airplane flight back from Texas, all the way to Newark, and he was always the type, hey AJ, anything that you need, let me know. And then that money starts, money, management, I don't know what it is, gets into their mind. And for example, I'll use this as an example, and I always give people, several chances, but this happened, and it really hurt when John fought Chael. My son and my daughter, they'll come with me to different events, and their collections are crazy. When I tell you my kids have more autographs than I do, because their rooms are just packed with autographs. So my son goes up to John Jones with a glove, a big UFC glove. It's a boxing glove. It's not even a glove, and it's got 50 signatures on it. I mean, Chael's on there. There's Burt Watson is on it. Mike Goldberg, Misha Tate was there. Brian Caraway. From the best fighter to the worst fighter to the trainers around this glove. My son gives it to John Jones. John, will you sign this for me? Now, he knows my son. And John looked at him and said, no, your father's just going to sell it. So at that point, to do that to a little kid, I lost total respect for the man. Not that John Jones, I mean, if you look on eBay, if you look on different websites, John Jones stuff sells. It doesn't sell. You could buy a John Jones glove any day of the week for $50. You could buy a John Jones form shorts any day of the week for $100. The cost of those, the $50 that the person paid for the signature, the $50 that the person paid for the shorts, and then the money that they paid for the authentication, isn't even paying for what they're selling for. So he's I would have to say John is probably one of the least valuable persons to collect. Even though he's tough to get. And I hope he redeems himself one day and he comes up and he says, you know what, AJ, you're the man. You're the man. But and also Rory McDonald. He's another guy who I won't even bother getting autographs from just because he's that arrogant. And it's not worth my time.
Now, just real quick to follow up on that example you showed when your son went up to him. The only thing I don't like about that comment is the fact that you said the glove had many signatures. So to me, if you're getting that many signatures on something, you're probably not going to sell it. Because then at what point you're going to go, oh, I'm going to sell it now after 10 signatures. I'm going to sell it now after. You know what I mean? It's not like he presented him, I guess, something that had never been unsigned. And that comment, I think, would have been maybe more justified. But to say something that's been signed, he could probably clearly see it's been signed several times. It's like, if you really wanted to sell it, you probably would have sold it already.
Right. Oh, and it says to AJ on it. His name is spelled AJAY, so it says to AJ on it. In 5 different places. So it's clearly not something that's going to be sold. Now, when I go up to John Jones with a couple gloves, and
it's going to get sold.
He knows what they're for, But now I don't even bother. If I see John, and I'll still, if I see him, I'll say, hey, how you doing, or something like that. But I won't even bother getting an autograph off of him.
Doesn't that kind of stuff? When we get off of the actual show, AJ, I'll show you around my little man cave area. But I believe I have 3 gloves sitting out. I have a Kat Zingano glove. I have an Eddie Wineland. No, I have a Brian Ebersol glove, and I have an Anthony Pettis glove. So the only 3 gloves that I have in my collection, because every time, it seems like the only people who are willing to sign are guys where the gloves aren't going to be worth, like you said, what I'm paying for it. And it's just it sours me on guys. I'm not a huge Jones guy, but when you say that he won't sign for your kid, it's people like your kid that are going to keep him being relevant. When he's done fighting and somebody your son's age sees him, they're going to be like, oh my God, that's John Jones. That's the guy that won 18 fights in the light heavyweight division, and no one's ever going to beat that record. It's kids like your son and my son, and to stiff them drives me nuts. I live 5 minutes from Bears camp. The Chicago Bears are practicing right now, and they do the same thing. They stiff these little kids on getting autographs. If you don't want to sign an autograph for me because you think I'm going to sell your autograph, that's fine by me. I'm almost 34, I think. Yeah, 34. If you don't want to sign for me, that's absolutely cool. But my kid might be the greatest football player ever, and you're souring these little kids on one of the greatest sports of all time, and it drives me nuts. It a couple years ago, Urlacher was here, And after practice, Urlacher gets on a golf cart, and they drive him out and around to where he doesn't even have to go past the kids. He was the face of the Chicago Bears, and for the 2 weeks that they're in Bourbonnais, he can't sign an autograph. That stuff drives me nuts, man.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, because I was the type of person, I'd be at the hotels Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and my goal was always to get 500, 1,000 autographs. I would bring people, and believe me, there's still guys who work for me, and they'll go and to different events. But I got to a point with our company that I'm making money off the fighters. I'm going to start giving back. So that's how we really got involved with the sponsorships and really doing a lot of private signings, public signings to take care of these fighters, because the reason that we're in business is because of them. So I could understand, and I still see guys that go to these events with 100 pictures of one guy, and you go up, ask them for an autograph, and they're sitting there and they have 20, and the fighters just signing one after another after another. I'm a little bit more respectful, and the folks that work for me are a little bit more respectful. They'll only go up with 18 pictures instead of 20. No, I'm only kidding. They'll go up with like only maybe 2 or 3 at a time. And one of the other things that we do when we do that, I always bring extra photos for the fighter, because a lot of these shots that the images that we have, they've never seen before. So they'll be like, oh, I never saw this before. So we'll always bring 10 extra, 5 extra, 10 extra to actually give to the fighter or to give to their team for them to keep. So we're just giving back. I like taking care of the fighters.
Yeah, Jim, you can tell him the story when we met Anthony Njokuani when I showed him his card.
Oh yeah, that was we were at the Arnold. Was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
It wasn't last year. Yeah, and so Dave was in a line, I think, getting something for me and himself. And so while another signing was going on, I was like, yeah, I'll get out of line. I'll go see Anthony here. And Dave has the Bloodlines card of Anthony Njokuani, who's originally from Nigeria. So it has like the Nigerian flag in the background and everything, and it says the country's name. So I went over to Anthony, I got my autograph, and I said, hey, if you don't mind, this is for my buddy. He wanted you to sign this card. And I handed him this card, which Dave's showing right there. I think you got to say something to show it, Dave.
Yeah, can you see it there?
Nice.
So I show him that card, and he like jumps back, and he's like, whoa. He goes, what is this? And I was like, yeah, this is your Bloodline. So he goes, whoa, this is crazy. He goes, I've never seen this before in my life. And he like picks it up, and this his sponsor Head Rush, and he's showing everybody in the Head Rush booth around, like, check out this card, like it has my country's flag. He's like, oh, this is dope. He goes, I don't even have one of these. And he had never seen it, didn't even know it existed, and he signs like, oh man, that's awesome. I think someone took a picture of him holding it. He took a picture with me holding it. And he was like, "Oh, that's all." He's like, "Thanks for showing me that. I really appreciate it." I was like, "Yeah, no problem, man." And then he was a really cool dude, signing there and getting autographs, and fan for life. I think Dave ended up doing a trade or something with him.
I told him, I said, dude, I got like 4 at home. Like, I have a ton of your cards. I said, I'll send it to you. I said, when I get home, I was like, tweet me your address. We had a conversation, and then he never sent me his address. And I still got him sitting in the binder. I was like, you can have. What am I going to do with him?
Yeah.
But
wow.
Anyway.
That's cool. That's
yeah. And speaking of guys hard to get, have you noticed maybe any of the non-American? Well, I'm not going to say. I guess Canadians speak English too, but any of the non-North American fighters, mainly like the Brazilian fighters, maybe some of the European guys that don't speak English. Or don't speak it very well. Have you noticed those guys hard to get autographs, or is it maybe just as easy as you go, hey, you need to, you can kind of mime signature, and or those guys seem to be hard to get too?
Well, I'm fluent in 8 different languages, including Portuguese, so I'm able.
Get out of here!
Wow.
No, I'm only kidding.
Oh, I was about to say, like,
this guy is good. He is a good.
Oh man, he had me believing him for a second. Oh man, I'm gonna walk out the room now.
I could barely speak English. So basically what I do is you can just motion to them to sign something. It's funny because I deal a lot with Matt Hamill. So a lot of our conversations are done with hand sign language and just motions. So I think a universal language I would say is facial expressions, and most of them understand hey, can you do this, or take a picture. So that's basically how you get them over.
Hey, Jim, I have one final question for AJ, and it should probably have been our first question, but but hey, it's a live show. We can do whatever we feel like. What happened? What got you into the idea of starting MMA Signatures?
That's a great question. I've always collected since I'm a kid. Everything from baseball cards, football cards, basketball cards, and autographs started getting really big. And I've had stores in the past. In major malls. New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and do you hear these people in the background?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Guys, I'm on a freaking podcast, and you're talking like everything's fine. This is important. Turn this down. Please be quiet for 10 minutes. All right. You there?
Yeah, we're good.
See, if we weren't live, we'd be able to edit that.
Right. And normally I gotta edit Dave and stuff. But that's all right.
Food for him, so he should shut his mouth, right?
That's my boss. No, that's my beautiful wife and the brains behind MMA Signatures. So basically, and I always use this example. You buy an Alex Rodriguez jersey, and we always had wholesale accounts. So when Alex Rodriguez was with Seattle, say for example, you buy his jersey signed by him. The cost was about $300, $350. You'd be selling it for $600. Then he gets traded from Seattle to Texas. So now this Seattle jersey that's signed by Alex Rodriguez that you have $300 invested in isn't worth nothing. Nobody will give you $50 for it. So now you have to invest more money into Texas. Then he gets traded from Texas to the Yankees. So now you have all these Seattle and Texas jerseys signed by Alex Rodriguez that aren't worth anything, because everybody now wants Yankees. So my passion ever since literally UFC 1, we went up to my buddy's house and he had this satellite dish that was like something that you'd see in NASA. And we watched UFC 1. I'll never forget it. We all punched in. So I've always had a passion for UFC. Ultimate Fighting MMA. So it got to a point where I said, you know what? I'm going to invest everything that we have into MMA. So we sold off our whole entire collections. And when I tell you collections, I'm talking $500,000 worth of collections, to invest into MMA.
Wow.
And, it's really paid off because I'd almost say that we're one of the pioneers in the sport, because of the collection that we have currently, because we've gotten into it so early. And it's not going to be as easy as it is right now, 10 years from now, to access autographs. It's going to just be like, the way Steiner's running things, and they're going to have exclusives with all these fighters. So, we're glad, one, we're developing these relationships with the fighters and their management teams at this time. And somebody told me yesterday, it's actually a guy who works closely with Nick Catone. He's actually partners with Nick Catone and Nick Catone's gym. And I never really thought about it. He said, but MMA is the third largest international sport in the world. So if you think about it, baseball is only an American sport. If you think about it, besides maybe Canada, but it's not worldwide. Soccer is worldwide. MMA is worldwide. And I think he said tennis. Tennis is worldwide. So this thing is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you think about the UFC roster, 2-3 years ago, it was maybe 200 people. It's already doubled since then. So it's going to get huge. So to answer your question, I know I went off on a little tangent. I see the opportunity in the MMA, and I'd rather, instead of being some of these major companies, I'd rather focus on one thing only, MMA, instead of having to worry about baseball, football, basketball, so on and so forth. I don't have to worry about a fighter changing teams or getting traded to a different team. Yeah. Plus, I love it. I absolutely love it. I could talk about it all day. I could go through my stuff all day. I could arrange things. I just love it. It's my absolute passion.
And
similar
see,
to you guys.
And see, Jim, this is why, I don't even know what time it is. I don't even care, to be honest.
It's game time.
It's 12:18 Central, and I got to work at 3, and I could probably talk to AJ until like 3 o'clock. Just
Yeah.
I mean, just in that little when you were describing that, I know a lot of people know. They know what you're talking about when you say Steiner. That's a company that deals with like authenticating and all that kind of stuff for the others. I believe for all the other sports. But is there an opportunity for MMA signatures to be the Steiner of MMA? Like, I guess is it possible for you to get stuff straight from the UFC, like be it like a mat or I mean? Can you be that guy?
I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be that guy. I have goals. And it's only a matter of time. I was just talking to my wife this morning. I don't know if you guys know, but JSA actually utilizes my autographs in their database to authenticate autographs. So when somebody sends an autograph to JSA, basically what JSA is saying, okay, this compared to AJ Hiller's autographs, in our opinion, this is a genuine autograph. And I was talking to the guy from JSA just last week, and he said, AJ, I love it when I see your holograms come in. He said, because I know it's legit. I don't know if you guys know, I have a numbered hologram for each one of my.
Yep,
my
I got on the Carlos Condit stuff I got from you in the other room. I got them both on the back of the frame there.
Yeah, and so one of the things that my wife and I were talking about this morning is why doesn't MMA Signatures have an authentication company, part of our company? So basically, what happens is I'm in the process right now talking to one of my guys from JSA, where within the next month or so, folks are going to be able to send items to us, and I'm going to have an expert who's going to be able to authenticate their items, and have a MMA Signature hologram because I'm not an expert. There's some fraudulent autographs out there that could pass in my opinion. Like if it were to come across my table, I would think that it was authentic, but most 99.9% of my items are obtained in person. So for that other small percentage, if we had a guy who actually, or a team of guys who actually had their microscopes and were able to authenticate the items, it would be so much better, and it would be another branch of our company. Other parts of our company that we're looking to do is a management team. I've been approached by several UFC fighters, several Bellator fighters, World Series of Fighting fighters, who ask about a management part of MMA Signatures, and at the end of the day, that's a possibility here in the future, So at the end of the day, yeah, I want to be the Steiner of MMA. I'm going to be the Steiner of MMA. I can't do it alone. I'm going to need, Beyond the Cage podcast to help me out. I'm going to need, Jim and Dave to help me out. I'm going to need everybody to help me out eventually. And the opportunities in this field, MMA, are endless. And the reason that they're endless is because it's so new. Think about baseball. The first 20 years of baseball, if you got into it and you started getting autographs and you developed different things, you would be a billionaire by now.
Oh man, absolutely.
So think about how new this sport is, and think about where it's going. So now's the time to get into this, without a doubt. So, yes, I'm going to be the Steiner of MMA. You heard this live.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, Jim, I just want, for the record, I don't know if you can cut that part where he said that Dave and Jim and Beyond the Cage, because I want to send it to Steve that he did not say Steve Sadler. So if you could cut that part out, that'd be great.
Maybe an excerpt.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do. I think I can arrange that.
But think of Steiner's Warehouse. I think of Steiner myself. If it wasn't for Derek Jeter retiring this year or Mariano Rivera retiring last year, Steiner would have been up the creek. Because right now the majority of their inventory is Yankee. Because they're based out of New York City and they deal with a lot of New York teams. So, just by Mariano retiring and just by Jeter retiring, boosts their sales. I mean, right now Steiner's sitting in a great place. However, if you picture the Steiner Warehouse, because when they do a signing, it's not like there's, they're only getting 10 of this or 15 of this or 20 of this. Think about how many players in a year in all organizations, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, are traded. You know, so they probably have a warehouse the size of a football field of merchandise that they could do nothing with because the player's been traded or, you know, had a bad year, so on and so forth. MMA, I don't have to worry about that. They can't get traded, you know? And heck, if Chuck Liddell became a movie star, you know, or Ronda Rousey becomes a big famous movie star, this stuff's going to sell even higher.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about Chuck Liddell getting traded to, you know, a different team. It's dynamic.
Now, bringing up the trading, like, it's not so much trading, but, you know, trading different organizations, I guess, so to speak. Does that because that's the only, I guess, really thing you could maybe kind of equate to team sports. Has that, like, for instance, like you said, you're friends with Joe Riggs, like, so before he's gonna be back in the UFC here soon once he overcomes his injury, but like when Joe Riggs left the UFC, was his stuff then not selling regardless whether it was UFC official because he's not in the UFC anymore, or or are there other fighters like that maybe were in the UFC, left, came back, that their stuff doesn't sell or doesn't matter? Once someone's in the UFC, that kind of already makes them, he used to fight in the UFC, that's kind of what that's how much you can sell his stuff for or whatnot.
Yeah, that brings up a great point. Because I'll use Efren Escudero as an example, or we could use Joe Riggs as an example. You know, UFC is the largest platform in the world, and it always will be. You know, so once you're in the UFC, of course, I've made it. You know, even though Bellator and World Series of Fighting are large organizations, you know, people want the folks that are in the UFC. You know, some of it is because of, you know, they only collect UFC guys. Some of it is I'll call it ignorance because, you know, it's that fan that is just following who everybody else is collecting or sees somebody on TV and says, oh, he's a UFC fighter, I got to buy that thing. So Efren Escudero, I didn't sell an Efren Escudero thing in a year. You know, they announced that he's back in the UFC. Boom! Now people are buying Efren Escudero. Same thing with Joe Riggs. You know, Joe Riggs was a double whammy. You know, announces that he's going to be in the UFC. The stuff starts selling. Then he shoots himself. Boom! Starts selling again. You know? So you know, made out pretty good with that. You know,
Jim, that's what we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
Shoot yourself. Shoot yourself on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't own a gun. Do you own a gun? Well, you've used a gun. You were in the Marine Corps. I would hope so. So you at least know how to use one. I've never even used one before. So it would probably make more sense if I shot myself more so than you, because people would go, "Wow, he shot himself and he used guns? Like, that's not good." People wouldn't even feel sorry for you. At least in my instance, they'd be like, "Oh man, I feel sorry for that guy." Which sucks, 'cause I really don't want to shoot myself. I don't want to do it.
In Joe's defense, I'll tell you what, and Dave, you would know, accidents happen. You know what I mean? Right. Just unfortunate that it happened to Joe. And, you know, Joe has a lot of critics, you know, but he has a lot of true diehard fans. And I'll tell you what, if you know Joe, his heart is the biggest heart in the world. He'd do anything for anyone. And, you know, hats off to Tim Kennedy, who actually came out when a lot of people were saying negative things about Joe shooting himself. And Tim Kennedy said, you know, I'm Green Beret or whatever Tim Kennedy is. He said, and I discharged a firearm, you know, while I was cleaning it too. So it just goes to show that experts, this happens, accidents happen, and you know, it's a shame, you know, that did happen. But you know, Joe will be back. He's a trooper. He's definitely.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we could go on and on about that. I mean, if this was 8 weeks ago, nobody cares that Joe Riggs shot himself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if he's not signed to a UFC contract, you know, maybe it's on Twitter, maybe. But once those 3 letters get attached to your name, then, you know, oh, Joe Riggs has a hangnail. Ooh, you know, it's just turns into a big deal. But Jim, we need to set up some sort of group call like this. Maybe we could get some of our other collector friends on, because we literally could talk for hours with AJ about all this stuff.
I do have one. Okay, we keep on saying this is going to be the final question, but this is going to be the final question. What to you, at least in MMA, as of right now, August 2014, whether it's multiple signees or just one person on one particular item, what would you say would be like the white whale of MMA? One item that you think could just get a ridiculous amount of money if someone was able to either get it or does have it and put it on the, what do you think would be something that would be like ridiculously crazy, whether it's signed or otherwise? Do you think like, oh, if I could add that or sell that or have a deal on that, that would be really cool? Is there anything like that? One, maybe one or two. Is anything coming to mind like on that?
Yeah. UFC contract with Joe Riggs' blood on it. No, I'm only kidding. I would tell you, what I will tell you is this: anything that Ronda Rousey touches is gold. I can't get enough Ronda Rousey stuff. I actually had a pair of her fight-worn shorts from when she fought Julia Budd. And that was something that I was going to keep in my personal collection, until I saw, the demand for it, and I sold it. But right now, August 2014, something that would be, man, that's a tough question. So if somebody said, okay, here's a checkbook or a blank check, you can buy one item right now, what would it be?
I got it. The answer. If you're looking for it, I got it.
Yeah, Dave. All right. Yeah, what's your answer, Dave?
There'd be two things. Well, there's one thing that I would want. I want the full mat from one of the events that I've gone to. Like the full thing. I want that. I really could care less. I don't even have to be there, but I think it would be awesome to own a piece of the in the entire canvas. That would be awesome. But one thing, I know that he just had a signing, but it seems like a lot of people are on the hunt for Fedor stuff because he's very difficult to get. So I was thinking maybe Fedor might be one that you'd have I was going to show us a Fedor autograph.
It's funny because I have these gloves, and this is the funniest thing in the world. I just thought they were neat, so I got them. But I guess these gloves here, they say are the
creme de la creme?
No, not even that. They're like because these things, I guess, have been passed around the different collectors for years now.
Right.
And if you saw these, so I ended up getting them, through a trade. A good trade too, I think. I traded a Chris Weidman's first walkout shirt for these. I had Chris Weidman's glove from his UFC debut, or I had his walkout shirt from his UFC debut. So I traded it for these two Fedor gloves because of how tough Fedor is. But these gloves, I guess people say, are bad luck gloves, so on and so forth. So I had them JSA'd, and I think that each one of these will bring me probably maybe $300 to $500 a piece.
Hey,
but anyway,
okay.
I got 25 items done from this past Fedor sign.
Yeah.
So if you guys need Fedor stuff, I got it.
Okay. So here's my trade. Hold on, I'm going to unplug my headphones. Hold on.
All right, before Dave goes, I want to say, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to give my answer to my own question.
Yeah, I want to hear this.
So, I was thinking I don't even know if it still exists, but Dave mentioned like the canvas. But to me, if somebody had the canvas from the first ever UFC fight, I think that would be absolutely ridiculous. I don't even. It's probably not even out there. They probably threw it away. It probably doesn't even exist. It's probably not even theoretically still in this plane of universe. But if someone could get that, and you could put that up somewhere, I think that would be maybe one of the most epic things you could get. Because right now, 2014, all the stuff that's happened, to go back and get it from the first ever event. And really a lot of things from that first ever event. If you had a ticket stub from that event, you got the poster from that. A lot of that stuff I think would really, is a lot of big time stuff. So if you got something like that, I think that would be pretty awesome.
You're absolutely right. And I was with Dan Henderson last week, and he actually has two canvases from Pride. He has Pride 33, and then he also has the Pride canvas from when he fought Bustamante. And I had told him, I said, well, what are you doing with them? He said, they're just hanging on the walls in my gym. I said, well, do you realize that Rampage Jackson had one? Well, first I said, how big is it? He said it's 24 by 24 because it's got to go, there were a ring, so it's got to come down. I said, do you realize that, Rampage had a canvas and they ended up cutting it up in like 1 foot squares and ended up selling them for like $300 a piece, signed by Rampage, right? So we're in my truck, figuring out how much, this canvas would be if Dan were to cut it up into 1 inch or 1 foot squares, sign them and sell them. And you realize that canvas, any canvas from the Bustamante fight or his Pride 33 when he fought Wanderlei, just 1 inch squares. So picture this, because I'm not good in math. So 24 times 24, right?
Right. That'd be the total area of the mat.
Yeah. So that's 576 square feet, which is
Right.
pretty big. Okay, times each one of those by, say, 300. You're talking $172,000 if you were to cut that up in 1 inch square or 1 foot squares.
And all he has to do is boop, real quick.
Yeah. So imagine that same UFC 1 canvas signed by Horace Gray, signed by Art 1 Glove Jemerson. Who knows where that canvas even is, Yeah,
that's, like I said, I don't even know if it's probably not even around. They probably didn't even think of that.
I know. I talk to Art Jemerson all the time. He actually had asked me to be his agent, his manager, Art 1 Glove. So he has some great ideas. And picture this, Art 1 Glove Jemerson is a pioneer in the sport, right? He fought in UFC 1. He was the first guy ever to fight Horace Gracie. He's the first guy ever to tap out in UFC history. How crazy is that? So that first guy ever. There's the second guy who tapped out to Horace Gracie. Nobody knows who the hell he is. But Art 1 Glove Jemerson, the first guy ever to tap out ever. So even though he lost the fight, he's still in the history books forever.
They brought him to 167. 1 Glove. We were there for the weigh-ins, and they brought Severin, Coleman, Hoyce, and 1 Glove. They were all on the stage for a question and answer. And to be completely honest, because I'm very new to the sport, probably since 2000. Well, right before Chael and Anderson fought, I haven't missed anything since the first Chael Anderson fight, and then I've gone back to relive everything through Fight Pass. But I didn't even know who Art 1 Glove Jemerson was. Like he was up there, I'm like, who's this boxing guy? And my buddy explained it to me, and then I've gone back and watched, and now I understand. But I mean, it was awesome because you're absolutely right. Like nobody cares. Perfect example. Javier Baez from the Cubs came up yesterday. Hit his first major league hit was a game-winning home run.
Wow.
Nobody cares what his second home run is going to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nobody cares. So
I'm going to show you some stuff because Art sends me stuff all the time. But I just think this stuff is so cool, and that's something that we're working on right now. There's some marketing things with them. We have some gloves that are made up. We changed Art's logo. We actually have a logo being made for Art, and it's going to be on 1 glove. And we had all left-hand gloves made.
Nice.
No right-hand boxing gloves. But I asked him, I said, Art, why did you wear a glove? And do you guys know why he wore a glove?
Didn't he say he kind of wanted to protect his hand? I've heard this before, and I feel ashamed that I can't. He just wanted to protect his hand. Yeah,
protect his hand and protect the fighter. He said, I'm a hard hitter. I was afraid to hit somebody without a glove on. But check out this. Check out how cool these are. And I think Art is a genius for even keeping these. This here, right? Can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is a signed copy of Art's participation agreement for when he fought in UFC 1. So this is the contract, and basically, this is what's going to happen. And look at this, like for non-fighting alternates, we're getting paid $750. 5th place through 8th place got paid $1,000. 3rd and 4th got paid $4,000. So this was the contract saying, if you win this thing, this is what you're going to be paid. And then
It's funny, the pay hasn't changed that much. No.
I know.
I'm kidding. Oh man. No, there's some guys getting paid that, but no, the top guys are getting paid. But no.
But then even something like this, so he's making copies of these, and this is basically everybody who was in UFC 1. This is what you got when you went to the fight, and it would say for example, who the fighters were, all the fighters.
So what's the plan for that? What's the plan for that? For that paperwork? Yeah.
Well, I got these. I'll frame them up, sell them.
Okay. No, I mean.
Oh, you want to buy one?
I'm half tempted to.
Yeah.
That's a Hoist Gracie signature.
And Art Emerson.
Wow.
And that's on the official UFC 1 program?
This is a replica of the program. Art actually had an official program and had them made up. But that's cool stuff. That's stuff that you just this is history here. Even though it's a replicated piece of history, it's history.
Yeah. You can't go on UFC.com and buy that.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay, so you said that you traded Chris Weidman's first ever gloves?
No, his walkout shirt.
Was it even signed? Just for it just was simply the shirt?
No, it was signed. It said thanks for all your support, and it was actually his autograph was a good autograph. It said Chris. You could see every letter.
Right.
Chris Weidman.
And you traded it for a pair of signed Fedor gloves.
Yeah, some other stuff too. I got
some other stuff, and you just gave the shirt.
Yeah.
I would say you made out better on that deal.
So don't. I want to preface with what I'm going to show you with Brian. I'm not actually going to trade it. I'm just trying to see what he's willing to spend. This is Brian Ebersol's walkout shirt from UFC 127 when he beat Chris Lytle on 11 days' notice.
Nice.
So what do you want to give me for that? All that Art Jimerson stuff?
Notice how he said all of it, AJ, and not some of it. He said all of it.
At the end of the day, you got to make smart business decisions. So what I would do is I would see how much people are willing to pay for that.
Right.
And to Ebersol is a genius. He's fighting, training out in Thailand. He's master at a gym out there, and he just gets better and better every fight. However, unfortunately, Dave, you're probably one of two or three Brian Ebersol fans.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. He's just not. People like controversy. Unfortunately, Brian Ebersol doesn't bring in controversy. He would beat 90% of the fighters out there. He's amazing. He's an amazing fighter. He's a technical fighter. But people don't like that. They like that controversy. So, for you or I know the value of that shirt. That value of that shirt is just as much as any other UFC fighter out there. But to people who don't understand the technical piece of it, they probably only pay $100, $200. Where in reality, the real value of that shirt is probably $1,000, if not more.
Yeah. No, and I mean, it's one of those things. You know what? You could offer me everything you got, but it's not leaving, because that I went to high school with Brian, and Brian gave me that shirt and said, I want you to have this shirt, so you better pay off my house and a couple other things for me to give it up, just because it's got that value. It's got sentimental value more than anything.
And that's the thing. That's what happens, is the sentimental value gets in the way of a lot of things. Like fighters won't sell their fight worn memorabilia just because of some sentimental reasons. Dan Henderson has every piece of his fight worn memorabilia except for the pair of his Fedor shorts that were stolen out of his dressing room while he was getting stitched up.
What is that? I did not. So when he fought Fedor and that was Strikeforce, right?
Yeah.
So somebody that was in California.
That was in Chicago.
No, it was in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So somebody.
Damn Illinoisans.
Oh man, Dave! I bet it's someone you know. Have you seen it? Have you seen it hit the black market streets of Illinois?
Just out of fairness, I could be wrong, but Steve Sadler may have been involved.
Oh, okay. Oh man. Oh
Actually,
man.
they know who it was, and actually at the time, UFC owned Strikeforce at that
Right.
time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was actually a UFC employee, a former employee, who went into the dressing room and took them, And then the thing is the reason that they found out is because this person tried to sell it at different sporting places. Said, hey, are you interested in Dan Henderson's fight-worn shorts from when he fought Fedor? And people who knew Dan said, Dan does not sell his fight-worn memorabilia. How did you get this? So who knows where those shorts are right now? I know that Dan doesn't have them, but they do know the person who did it.
Oh man, I feel like I'm not going to condone stealing someone's stuff, but if you were going to steal a fighter's stuff in his locker room, I would steal something he wouldn't notice. He's going to notice his shorts missing. You know what I mean? He might not notice. I don't know what else would be in there, but there is something other small or insignificant he probably wouldn't notice. But if he goes back and is like, "Where's my shorts?" Like, you gotta notice that. Like that's for real.
Yeah, it's amazing. But he's even though he doesn't sell any of his stuff, he's not the best at keeping his stuff organized. The one guy I deal with a lot of guys from the clinch gear, and the one guy told me the one time he took Dan's truck to go wash it, and underneath the seats of the truck was Dan's 2 Pride belts and his Pride Grand Prix championship belt, shoved underneath the seat. And he told Dan, Dan, you know that your belts are here? He said, oh, I was wondering what happened to those. Now that's something that you cannot put a value on. Picture this. The Pride, not the Grand Prix belt, but the 2 Pride belts that Dan has, I guess.
Those are the silver ones.
Yeah. So it's the middleweight and the welterweight belts. Those are the only of those belts that were ever made. So like when Dan beat Wanderlei Silva, they didn't make a new belt for Dan. He took the belt that Wanderlei Silva won, and he took that belt from Wanderlei Silva. So
I did not know that.
So Dan has the only 2 Pride belts because he was the champion when Pride was bought by the UFC. So he has the only 2 he has the welterweight and the light heavyweight, I guess we'll call it.
So and then Fedor would have the heavyweight and Gomi the lightweight. So those are the only 4 Pride belts in existence.
Yes. Yes.
I did not know. That's crazy.
And the other thing, we just opened up a whole nother can of worms for the next episode because don't you guys do belts as well, AJ?
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff. We didn't even get to talk about my business. We're talking about all the fun stuff. No, I'm only kidding. We do belts. We do belts too, which
man, see,
belts are pretty cool. Yeah.
Yep.
So we can do this. We could do this all the time. I enjoyed this. I don't get to do this. This is actually the first podcast I've ever been on.
Hey, this is the first podcast I've ever been on.
Oh man.
Is that what you call it, right? Beyond the Cage podcast, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
Beyond
it.
the Cage MMA podcast.
This is you got to join us on our live version because, like we said, there was not. We actually this is what we get on the live shows. You get behind the scenes here because I don't cut out the parts I don't like. I told Dave in preparation. I was like, Dave, do you want to take this week off? There's not a fight. What are we gonna do? And he's like, I don't know. He's always like, what up to you? I go, well, we can do some fan questions. Well, let's see what AJ's doing. We've been trying to get you on for a while. In different days, it's like, let's see what he's doing. And you said, I can come on. I was like, all right, we got something going here, and we've had a great live show so far. So definitely, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. And just I've said the website. I think I've said the Twitter, but just to plug it one more time here for everybody, so they can go and check out your awesome stuff on there.
Okay. Our website www.mmasignaturesusa.com. Twitter is AJ MMA Signatures. And then our Facebook is MMA Signatures. Check it out. Instagram is MMA Signatures, and I'm new at Instagram. I'm the worst social media person in the world. My son actually he does all my Instagram stuff, so that's MMA Signatures as well. But guys, I thank you one for having me. Two, I just want to do a little shout out. On the 16th of this month is a busy day for us. We actually have 4 of our fighters that we sponsor are fighting. Brett Martinez and Brovsky are fighting at XFE, which is new CFFC. Then also we have Caleb Trumbull. He fights out of Indiana. He's fighting that day. And Lauren Murphy fighting her UFC debut against Sarah McMahon. So appreciate your support with our some of the fighters that we support.
Cool. Hey, the guy that's fighting, he's fighting out of Indiana or he's fighting in Indiana?
No, he's from Indiana. His name is Caleb the Bull Trumbull. TRUN.
Okay.
He's still an AMI. We do sponsor quite a few AMI fighters. Just with AMI fighters, we have to we give gear instead of monetary gifts. I guess we'll call them. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, again, AJ, thanks for coming on. He's Dave Sadler on Twitter @VigilanteJuice. I'm Jim Gramm on Twitter @JimGramm. And this has been the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. And again, thanks again to AJ at MMA Signatures, one of our partners. We got Top Rated MMA. We got MMAFreak.com, MMAinsider.net, MMAforlife.ca, and of course, unfortunately, Dave's brother Steve at VigilanteMMA.com as part of the show, helping us run everything. So again, this has been the live version, the audio version. If you're listening to that, thank you for listening to that, and thanks for all the YouTube hits and whatnot. And we'll be back to a normal audio show next week, and we're going to talk about the next UFC fight night, Ryan Bader and Ovince St. Preux. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next week here on Beyond the Cage, presented by Fight Chicks.